Hey, good afternoon. I wanted to go over just doing a little bit of research with DeepNewz and sort of how do we handle stories and where do they come from. So take this story, for example, was on the front page today. Kamala Harris chooses Tim Walz as running mate, debuts in Philadelphia on August 6th. Out of this, we can say, okay, one of the entities is Tim Walz. So let's see all the stories we have about Tim Walz. And the view is going to look like this. We're going to see a few main stories with pictures and a few other main stories without. And as you can see, we have sort of a variety of stories here. We have stories about Tim Walz's record in Minnesota, about restoring voting rights to 50,000 felons, the story about Uber and Lyft, probably about labor laws, the main story about Kamala Harris choosing him as VP, as well as some other stories like Steve Martin declining to play Waltz on SNL, and also the Tim Walz stolen valor allegations. So, what is that all about, right? And if you take a look at this, I mean, basically what happens is that you have a significant number of people, prominent people online pointing out, allegations of stolen valor, i.e. claiming to have done more in the army than he actually did. And you can sort of see some of the top posts here. For example, this one from Mike Cernovich. And as you can see here, Cernovich, who served in the army himself, points out that everyone who was, a veteran has these particular records. He can share them and show them, and he basically kind of breaks down, the holes that he sees in Tim Walz's military record. You can also see other stories, things like this. But I think it's interesting to go back and sort of, see what we're showing versus what you're going to see, for example, in Google News. So in Google News, I just Googled for Tim Walz just now, and you're going to see this story from a few days ago about how Tim Walz doesn't own any stocks, bonds, or real estate. So we had that as well. This NPR story about Walz and a legion of dudes want to give men permission to vote Democrat. Kind of makes sense that was part of the pick. And to Google's credit, the military record questions are showing up here. You basically see a couple of posts, an opinion post from the Washington Post, and also this piece from The Hill. So, they're not hiding this news in particular. Let's take a look at the Hill piece. And I took a look at this piece. I mean, it's, pretty solid piece, pretty well written. Specifically, it focuses on, House Republicans, asking about the record, saying it in Congress, kind of like very official stuff, which makes sense. The Hill literally reports on Congress. And you can see that this piece was written, by a journalist, for The Hill, and does a pretty good job. But I think that one thing that's notable is that in our stories here, like we're going to show you some of the top sources online. So these are going to be people with large followings, strong points of view, perhaps. But it's a different kind of sourcing. I think again when just take this stolen valor story, whatever you think of it, Google is going to tell it to you when it becomes an official matter from congressmen, from official reporting, if they have that. Whereas I think we are going to have that as well, but also aggregate when sort of top sources are saying it. Now, we're not necessarily saying that if a bunch of people with 25 followers talk about it, we care. We don't index that at all. But these are pretty, if you wanted to learn more, I do think that, Twitter in particular, or X now it's called, has really good sourcing, really good content. But obviously, you need to organize it, summarize it, and find it. And that's a big part of what we're doing with DeepNewz. The focus here isn't really on this particular story, but I think it sort of enlightens, how our coverage is going to be a little bit different than looking at Google, much less if you look at NPR or CNBC or, some of these outlets. I mean, that they're going to be, very, very biased. They're going to write about some things and not others, I think that, Washington Post and New York Times are, they're perfectly capable of writing, stories, that are critical of a Democratic nominee, but they may not cover certain stories that dozens or hundreds of top people on X are talking about. They don't feel compelled to do it. They will talk about it when people in Congress talk about it, but I think we will summarize it and show those when people are talking about it online, which I think is in many ways a better, but certainly a different representation of what it is that people, actually care about. And again, the coverage is going to be pretty balanced. I mean, we're going to have stories on all sides. I mean, we're not featuring things that are pro Tim Walz or anti Tim Walz. We're just like, hey, there's a critical mass of people online, of the top sources, discussing this, and they're talking about the same thing. So let's write a story about it and show those sources. So, for example, if you look at today, just refresh just now, the U.S. election, we're seeing sort of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and basically a virtual tie according to the poly market odds. That's a story, right? It shows some of the individual leads. Harris leading in Miami-Dade, according to this story, and leading overall in opinion polls. Joe Rogan endorsing RFK Jr., et cetera, et cetera. So, it's really going to be kind of, again, agglomeration of what all the top sources are saying, both official writers, commentators, et cetera, famous people, the Congress people themselves post stories. We don't have any of those at the moment, but we definitely have in the past where, 10 or 20 Congress people would sort of say something similar or comment on the same topic, and we would aggregate that in the story. Anyway, just kind of wanted to show you what we've got and, why we think this is a compelling way to follow the news. Thank you for watching.